I am going to present the module on policing in democratic and pluralistic societies, issues and challenges. The learning outcomes of this module are to make the learners understand the various issues in policing in India, to make the learners understand various challenges in policing in a democratic and pluralistic society. India's crime rate has been growing rapidly in the past few years. The major reason behind this rapid increase is the inefficiency of the Indian police force. For a fairly long time, crime in our country was fought with what was called beat patrolling, groups of constabulary patrolling streets in anticipation that the fright of being trapped red-handed would be adequate to dissuade would-be criminals. The advancements in technology has changed everything, yet the system hasn't been modernized entirely. Most of those technologies are unavailable in rural India. In those areas, people still have to travel to an adequate location to report a crime. Many researchers have been talked about the major problems faced by the police force today and how they can be prevented. According to them, a change in the quality of functioning of the police department is highly needed. A better workforce, increasing the equipment and increasing funds would definitely help in making the Indian police force one of the best forces in the world. The main problem behind this is the corruption and the lack of investment. Every other policeman is corrupt. There were an approximate of 66 lakhs crime cases, and these are not all, as there were many officers that would let the criminal go for a bit of cash or just don't find the case to be registered and further investigation made. Corruption is our force's biggest enemy. The police force is also way too under-equipped across the country. There are only 7 vehicles for 100 policemen in average, which is why they are strained to the public transport. Our police force is also backward with combat equipment and weaponry. Another problem faced by the police force is regarding hierarchical issues and lack of funds for training and equipment. A part of the Indian police force is still equipped with the World War style pistols and derisory bulletproof vests. They are also unable to perform in a combat as they haven't been properly trained to use firearms in combat. The government has decided to make investments in technical and cyber intelligence, forensic capabilities and communication systems so that the police force is able to keep up with the increasingly urban technology which is utilized by modern criminals. But it is evenly imperative that solemn efforts should be made to park up technological dissemination within the police department. Many parts of the country are operating without minimal technologies such as the internet. It is believed that to improve the current state of the Indian police force, the police department needs a better workforce, better equipment and increased funds for constant training and, according to him, for better policing and to fortify democratic performance. There should be an amendment in the mindset of the common people, the political parties and the rulers of the country. Indians are unaware about the fact that police in India is largely underpaid, understaffed, overworked, demoralized, inadequately trained and equipped and subject to political interference, feared as a persecutor rather than respected as a protector. Often callous and corrupt, the policeman is denounced by the public, criticized by the preacher, ridiculed by the movies, berated by the newspapers and unsupported by the prosecuting officers and judges. He is shunned by the respectable, condemned by the enforces the law and dismissed when he does not. He is supposed to possess qualifications of a soldier, doctor, lawyer, diplomat and educator with remuneration less than that of a daily laborer. Police personnel face variety of stressors or job pressures due to their role. The job pressure for police officer include the responsibility of protecting the public, constant exposure to other people's problems, emotional distancing from others, the inactivity, crisis, seesaw, maintenance of macho defenses, bipolar thinking, negative public image of police, a web of personal puzzles and case ceaseless on-the-job catastrophe. Crime statistics reveal that number of suicides among police personnel is increasingly steadily over the years. These suicides identify that police personnel of India are experiencing high level of stress. These stressors can become a growing and progressive disease which may undermine the efficiency and potential of the police force. Timely intervention can prevent much of the damage due to stress. It is said that to recognize the problem is itself a major step in handling it effectively. Thus, the study makes an attempt to investigate the nature of stress experienced by the police personnel. Now, let us discuss about the problems of police in India. The problems of Indian police are either too obvious or too subtle to be comprehended by a layman. The common sense clinches about constraints and hazards of police work and miserable, unconducive conditions of police service hardly deserve any advocacy by police watchers. Moreover, the police, being a buffer or a shock absorber of social change, permit the political rulers of the democratic system to consolidate and legitimize their power positions, and naturally they cannot afford to take risk in the field of policing at their own peril. In addition to this, the socio-cultural systems in the developing world treat their police forces with callous apathy and animated hostility, because of which the police profession does not get its due share of attention and credit for stability and development at the hands of popular representatives in the democratic foray. The vested interest in society and the political system generally tend to join hands in maligning the police and frustrate change and growth by exploiting the functional nature of the police job and the disciplined character of its uniform. The non-police authorities of police reform find it very convenient to keep the police unchanged. In a democracy where there is law and the lawmakers change too frequently, and several kinds of disorders reflect and measure the pace and goals of a social change, the professional universe of the policeman is riddled with political problems which he can neither nor own nor suffer. The concept of police as a limb of law in a society wedded to rule of law expects this executive arm of the government to be depoliticized. Conversely, the police organization cannot be left to its own also, because the job of policing requires political direction and discretionary interpretations, subject to the overall control of the judiciary of the country. The dilemmas and challenges are innumerable, and some of them can be listed as the ubiquitous infrastructure, explosion of police tasks, corruption, dysfunctionalism of rural police, hierarchical issues, anomalous personal system, the colossal ignorance of either side, police subculture, and the fragility of the equipments, the paradox of paramilitarism, non-development of policing. Thus, the dilemmas of police profession have social, political, and professional overtones. The operational problems are getting aggravated in the want of a new philosophy, more professionalized equipment, better developmental resources, and a managerial approach, so very essential to handle the dilemmas, the gaps and the conflicts that beset the organization. When some of these and allied problems are inherent in nature and scope of the police job, several others, and perhaps the more critical ones, have sprung up from the inevitable thrusts of democratic awakening and developments. We have to urge the teeming millions ignited by the mounting pressures of modernization. Police hierarchical issues. The hierarchical structure laid down in the Indian Police Act originates from the colonial structure and mindset. Hence, only a few high-ranking police officers have true decision-making powers, while the manpower is concentrated at the lowest level, constable level. This hierarchical system does not encourage nor expects the constables to think independently or to take their own decisions or initiatives. The constables are strictly following the superiors' orders and acting merely as messenger boys. In India, 85% in the police force are ranked head constables or constables, which forms a much skewed system. Even the police officers with higher ranks can feel disempowered. Their decisions can be undermined either by orders of the superior or unwarranted political interference. This lack of empowerment, together with the absence of meaningful career growth, has contributed to the generally low degree of morals and diseased sense of public responsibility. Therefore, it is suggested that the empowerment of all police personnel is essential. In the present police force, appointments, transfers and promotions are mostly based on subjective opinions. Promotion to higher positions directly involves the executive, while transfers and postings are vested in the hands of higher ranked police officers and applied to all levels. Even here, the political executive has an important say. A new government usually appoints transfers and promotes policemen they know and are loyal to them. Police subculture now. Police subculture is defined as a specific set of beliefs, attitudes and behaviors exhibited by those in law enforcement. Because police officers spend the majority of their time dealing with crime, they tend to view members of the public as untrustworthy and potentially hostile. Organizations have districts which are the set of behavioral, emotional and psychological frameworks that are deeply internalized and shared by the department. The police department too has a very strong culture of people's habit, routines, rituals, conventions and the stories in the department. The fundamentals of politics, hierarchy, bureaucracy and monopoly give rise to the culture in the department. Some of the dominant grains of the culture in the department are that they do not take responsibility for their actions and do not innovate out of fear of making mistakes. They accept mediocrity rather than reaching for excellence and strongly resist change rather than adopting it. Clannishness, secrecy, insulation from others in society, the police tend to socialize together, believe that their occupation cuts them off from relationship with civilians, and the police members of all ranks attach deep cultural significance to police organizations as havens of discipline, restraint and authority in a milieu of chaos. Police officers look to fellow officers for support, unity and teamwork, and this creates a dynamic of us, the police versus the public. This mentality has a good side and a bad side. On the good side, officers feel this sense of trust is vital to successfully doing their jobs. The mantra of police officers is that there is a thin blue line between order and chaos, meaning without the existence of a police force, the general order within society would dissolve into chaos. This mantra reiterates the notions of unity, mutual interdependence and teamwork amongst officers that are necessary to perform the duties of an officer. On the bad side, embracing them us versus them mentality can lead to some values and behaviors that deviate from what can be considered acceptable in modern society. Now I'll talk about police corruption. The term police corruption has been used to describe many activities: bribery, violence and brutality, fabrication and destruction of evidence, racism and favoritism or nepotism. Police corruption is a specific form of police misconduct designed to obtain financial benefits, other personal gains or career advancements for a police officer or officers in exchange for not pursuing or selectively pursuing an investigation or arrest. Police as a law enforcing agency is an important institution of that social control which existed in some form or the other in all society in all ages. Police is an integral part of the present day society. A society in the present setup cannot live and progress without an effective, sincere and honest police force. The Indian police have its roots in the ancient period and the present day police are the outcome of an evolutionary process. The bad things which it has inherited from the old system include corruption among others. Policemen today. Corruption exists in one form or the other in the police system. Corruption has infected every sphere of modern life. It has vitiated the model values of society and the police force cannot be an exception. In fact, corruption of police is not a new phenomenon. But the irony is that the issue has seldom been seized by the organization with a sense of seriousness and urgency. Corruption in the police service in India has become under increasing public and official scrutiny in the past few years. A series of public scandals, albeit apparently involving a small number of officers, has caused concern about the standard of ethics and integrity within the police force. In response, the police service is putting in place a range of short and longer term reforms to tackle malpractices and misconducts within its ranks. Predictably, there are many competing explanations for police corruption in the criminological literature, one of the traditional occupational explanation of corruption has been that it is the product of bad apples and atypical of the organization. Here, by examining briefly the reasons why the bad apples theory of police corruption has been largely discredited in recent years, when confronted with allegations of corruption for which there is supporting evidence, police agencies will generally claim that the problem identified is limited to a small number of corrupt officers who are quite unrepresentative of the wider standards exhibited by the organization. The history of policing, however, is full of examples where this explanation could simply not be sustained in the face of overwhelming evidence of organized corruption. Before it is possible to consider ways in which institutionalized police corruption might be prevented, it is important to understand what gives rise to corruption. What makes it possible? Once again, the literature is reasonably consistent in identifying key issues in the development of corrupt practices within police organization. What tends to vary is the way in which these issues are compartmentalized. Sherman has outlined what he refers to as the constant and variable factors in police corruption, which is used as a means of organizing the discussion. Constant factors are those which facilitate corruption, the extent of which is subsequently influenced by a number of variable factors. The major source of corruption in the police is the vast power vested in a police officer in a day-to-day working. Today, police corruption is a common feature in all situations where they have discretion and where they are in a position to use that discretion. One such example is the enforcement of prohibition laws, as the popular adage goes that power corrupts and absolute power absolutely corrupts. Two cognitive features of police are that power and discretion give ample scope for the police personnel to indulge in corruption. They enjoy wide powers while discharging the core functions of police, which is maintenance of peace and order and prevention and detection of crime and criminal activities. Similarly, police discretion is a double-edged sword that can be used or misused by the personnel on the mosaic of law and order situation. Though the personnel are bound to exercise these unique features strictly in accordance with the procedures that lay down processes and formalities. Those intoxicated with tremendous powers and dominated by selfish motives can misuse them with a view to attaining private gains. Such deviant behavior of the personnel appears in different forms in many areas of policing. Payments of bribes and postings and promotions are a well-known phenomena in police department. As a result, the policemen who have paid their way through try to recover this amount as soon as possible, and corruption becomes a tool for getting better return on investment. Now I'll talk about political interference. Political interference as a particular concern for police in dealing with the executive, whether at the national, provincial or local level, is what is commonly referred to as political interference. Democratic principles require governments to have authority over the police, provide clear policy discretion, prepare policing plans and set standards of performance indicators, but appropriate democratic government control must not become political interference that threatens impartial policing in the public interest. The best safeguard against undue interference is the existence of clear and transparent procedures defining appropriate political direction and well-functioning accountability systems. Such procedures need to be incorporated into the law and need to be included procedures related to the hiring and firing of senior police officers. As an absolute minimum, politicians must refrain from interfering in operational law enforcement decisions in individual cases. Now I'll talk about danger of disrepair in police. Although the police are tasked with battling India's most pressing problems, including armed militancy, terrorism and organized crime, a lack of political commitment and investment by the state has left the police overstretched and ill-equipped. There is just one civil police officer for every 1,000 Indian residents, far below Asia's regional average of one police officer for 558 people and the global average of 333 people. police infrastructure is crumbling. Decaying colonial-era police stations and posts across India are stocked with antiquated equipments and lack sufficient police vehicles, phones, computers, and even stationery. A severe police staffing shortage is compounded by additional demands on an already stretched force. Police are routinely diverted to protect VIPs, usually politicians, business people, and entertainment figures. Senior police officers frequently use low-ranking staff as orderlies and even as personal family servants. The police structure in India is based on a colonial law that did not provide the lower ranks, usually local recruits, with operational authority or advanced professional training. Inexplicably, that system continues 6 decades after the end of British rule in India. Constables, the bottom rank, make up as much as 85% of the Indian police, but for the most part they are not trained to investigate crime complaints. Junior and low-ranking police are frequently demoralized due to degrading work and living conditions. Police are under constant stress due to the statutory requirement that they be available for duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a grueling reality for the police. We interviewed many of whom shared that they were hardly ever permitted a day off, and some of whom, living in barracks, literally had not been given time to see their families for weeks. Police say that they are exhausted and have no time for exercise or recreation. Many low-ranking police officers live in barracks that are deteriorating, cramped, and without enough beds. Junior-ranking police officers have little chance of promotion and are subject to the unrealistic demands of senior officers who are for the most part directly recruited into management positions and often have no first-hand knowledge of the difficulties that the lower ranks face. I'll talk about the inefficient deployment of personnel now. Duty burden is obvious as the Indian police suffer from a shortage of personnel. According to the most recently available information, there is a national average of 1 civil police officer for every 1,037 residents, far below Asia's regional average of 1 police officer for 558 people and the global average of 1 for 333 people. More than 13% of civil police positions are vacant nationwide, but the actual deficit of staff is greater because allocations are based on outdated population figures and suppressed crime registration. The personnel shortage means heavy workloads, long working hours, often without overtime being paid, and officers on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Police say that the resulting stress and frustrations contribute to low morale and pressures to find investigative shortcuts, particularly since officers designated for crime prevention and crime investigation work are often diverted to immediate day-to-day duties such as patrolling, demonstrations, and religious processions. The personnel shortage is compounded by misuse of police time. Now I'll talk about the issues and challenges at cutting-edge level. Most of the issues and challenges which exist are at the constabulary level or cutting-edge level. Although they make up 85% of the Indian police force, constables and head constables have limited qualifications, training, and authority. Government commissions have long recommended transforming constables from mere automatons recruited, trained, and developed mostly to perform duties of a mechanical character to skilled workers with the training necessary to undertake crime investigation and prevention work. Constables are permitted to assist in crime investigations but are not trained to do so and have a limited role. While constables designated as munshis are authorized to record complaints in a daily diary, they are not authorized to register first information reports and initiate the investigation process. Because junior ranking officers authorized to lead investigations and register FIRs are overburdened, many crimes go unregistered or poorly investigated. At the same time, constables are sometimes the first responders to crime scenes, either because they are on beat patrol or because higher ranking officers are unavailable. First responders should provide emergency assistance to the injured and secure the crime scene by limiting access of bystanders, identifying witnesses, and protecting the evidence. The latter actions are crucial to the success of the entire investigation. but constables are not trained to perform such tasks. Police at the next rank level, assistant sub-inspectors and sub-inspectors, bear the majority of the burden of investigating common crimes such as theft and, in smaller stations, murder and rape cases. Yet, like constables, they spend the majority of their time on bandobast duties, patrolling religious processions, political demonstrations and commercial areas. Police are required to be available for work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a grueling reality for constables and other lower ranking officers. As government employees, police are allowed paid leave. However, in practice, the police chief or district officer may issue a standing order to recall police on vacation or state that no leave is permitted for a certain period or when there are exigencies or staff shortages. Superior officers often deny leave because of staff shortages. It has been reported that they had to beg for a leave of absence when there was a family need, particularly the marriage of children or siblings. Police do not resolve overtime pay because shift system exists only in theory. The long working hours create stress and frustrations which results in abuses against the public. At least a third of senior police officers are recruited directly into high-ranking positions from the Indian Police Service. Such officers are placed in regions with which they often have no prior experience to limit the possibility of bias or entanglement in local politics. However, that unfamiliarity can limit their understanding of the problems subordinate officers encounter when dealing with, for instance, communal violence and land disputes. Another problem is that low-ranking police are assigned to non-skilled tasks, including serving as orderlies for senior police. Many researchers have reported that constables being used as tea servers and personal assistants, while the practice is declining, and it is observed that reports of constables assigned as personal servants to the households of senior police constables fill data entry and unskilled positions which in other countries are typically staffed by civilians. Now I'll talk about leadership. The leadership role assumes great significance in all organizations because without leadership, an organization is but a muddle of men and machines. The essence of leadership is the ability to obtain from each member of the organization the highest quality of service he has the capacity to render. Leadership can be defined as the process of influencing the behavior of others to work willingly and enthusiastically for achieving predetermined goals. Good leadership in the organization itself is the motivating factor for any organization. Leadership can simply be defined as an act of making an impact on others in a desired direction. Most work on leadership in organization has been done on the way a leader gets results through persons. There are many styles of leadership. Some are known to be effective and others are ineffective. For example, does he order them, which is the autocratic style, to do what he wants done? Does he involve them in planning how to do things, which is the democratic way of leadership? Is he indifferent and does he allow them to do as they like? These police leaders are at various levels. DGP and IGP are the policy makers for the police organization. They have the overall leadership of the police organization in a state or area. The SHO is the leader at the police station level. Police organizations are inherently top-down in their managerial style and order, maintenance policing being a strategy adopted by top management and implemented by lower-ranking personnel. It may hit a roadblock that is typical in top-down organizations. Lower-ranking personnel may not embrace the mission of order maintenance to the same extent that their superiors do. Due to the rigid hierarchical structure and top-down management style or communication, these subordinates are not satisfied with their leaders. This in turn affects the morale of the team members, reducing the effectiveness and productivity of the unit or team. Now to conclude, there are various issues and challenges of policing in a democratic and pluralistic society. While performing the duties like maintenance of law and order and prevention and detection of crime, the police also must not violate human rights and must remain transparent and accountable. In a pluralistic society, policing also must remain impartial without hurting the sentiments of any community or religion, so that there is no unrest in society. To deal with the issues like police subculture and cynicism, corruption, etc., various reforms and structural changes needs to take place in order for the policing to be upheld as good and democratic policing. Policeman is also a human being. While performing the duties, especially in the period of crisis, they suffer from various humiliations and difficulties at various levels. Humiliations from immediate superiors, fellow citizens, press, other law agencies, and even from executives. Urgency and political pressure sometimes result into breakdown of an honest and efficient policeman. Threat of indiscipline, accountability, incapability, low wages, less holidays, shortage of manpower, overburdened duties, fear of life death, on many occasions, inadequate facilities and service conditions, and so on. Multiple problems are faced by them. When policemen engage in anti-terrorist mafia operations or anti-Naxalite extremist operations, other people cannot understand the pain and suffering of their family members. The corruption in police can be controlled through various ways, like local policing, more responsive and accountable enforcement, making transfers and promotions, transparent use of information technology, performance monitoring, minimizing political interference, greater functional independence, introducing greater accountability. Unlike the other executive wings of the government, the police, which has maximum visibility in the society, their omissions and commissions rapidly attract public attention and spread like a wildfire through gossip and hearsay. As the police wear a mantle of defensiveness and many of their functions are shrouded in secrecy, there is a tendency to mythicize or sensationalize such lapses like corruption. The image of police so created in the minds of people always remain poor and sullied. No doubt public awareness of policing has risen tremendously, but issues like corruption are such hidden areas where facts, fiction, myth, perception and reality are very intricately interwoven. The defaulting policeman becomes a symbol of the entire organization, and his misconduct would be used as a powerful weapon to tarnish the image of the force. Thus, the major task of the police in the new millennium is to refurbish the image, for which reforms at and personal levels are imperative. Ronald Siegel aptly said that corruption, like sacrifice, starts at the top and percolates down, colors the whole society. Hence, nationwide determination to combat corruption and a strategy of well-designed action and follow-up is needed to control the menace of police corruption in India. Thank you.